Hello and welcome to another River Valley Now Pulse exclusive. Today we're joined by Polk County Judge Ben Cross, as well as Justices of the Peace Dr. Ernie Enchelmeyer, Caleb Moore, as well as County Attorney Clay McCall. Obviously, most of today will revolve around the casino issue. There are lots of questions which still remain, but hopefully we can learn some things and get a clearer picture as this situation winds toward an eventual conclusion. First question, can you walk me through your timeline as the casino process is concerned? When did you as judge and you as JPs change your mind and decide to support a casino operator?
You know, I think we can all agree that the June time frame leading up to June of 2019 was certainly the beginning of when we started seeing the way the legal system was going to take this. I think it was obvious that a state constitutional amendment was passed in November of 2018. At the same time, a local option was passed, and the conflict between those two was obviously growing as to which could trump one another, so to speak. And so we started looking for every mechanism possible to put that local option to the ballot. And that was done throughout the course of May. I reached out personally to the Secretary of State's office, and they said there's just no legal way you can do it. We had our attorney, we had constitutional attorneys. We reached out to 2 or 3 reputable constitutional law firms to look at this, to give us advice. And that advice was given as no, there's no way for you to hold that election as you have it written out. So that began the process. So we were in about May of 2019, and then fast forward to our June quorum court meeting that we called to address the issue. And in doing that public forum there, the attorney, Mr. Travis Story, who represents the local group Citizens for Better Polk County, came to the podium, and his exact words were, my intent of writing this ordinance was for you, and he pointed to the quorum court, is for you to pick a vendor and let's vote on it. Well, that gave, I guess, a whole new light to the way we perceived that conflict between the constitutional amendment and the local ordinance. And so giving that different perception that, hey, no, the intent of this ordinance was his exact words were, you pick a vendor and let's vote on it. So that led us into looking the next week, okay, he said pick a vendor and vote on it. But if we pick a vendor and we put that out for a public vote, you're going to have 4 other vendors obviously vying for that opportunity as well. And so if you pick a vendor, and I'll just pull one out of there, Hard Rock. You pull Hard Rock and say, this is who we're presenting according to 2018-042 for the citizens of Polk County to vote for and vote. Well, you would have had 4 other vendors advocating and obviously spending large amounts of money to go against that vendor. And so let's say that vendor didn't pass and we had to pick a next vendor. In every one of those equations, it was going to be a 4-to-1. Regardless of who came out as a choice, the other 4 would advocate against that and spend a lot of money lobbying their efforts. So we saw that, and then became what I call the 4 lawsuit equation. The court was going to be faced, and the county was going to be faced with any number of 4 lawsuits. And those 4 lawsuits were, okay, if you go forward, because the predominant feeling was we're going to go forward and we're going to hold this election as written, and we'll put it out there and let it be what it is. But the problem is, moving forward, we were going to get an illegal exaction case placed against the county saying, hey, Polk County, you cannot use taxpayer funds to call for the election slated in 2018-042 because you have a constitutional amendment that supersedes your local ordinance, and to use taxpayer money for that purpose would be wrong. And so even if we would have just said we're going forward with it, we were going to face a lawsuit. And that's exactly what they walked into my office and told me is, I want to sue you based on illegal exaction of you're using our taxpayer money to call for something that conflicts with the Constitution. Now, a lot of people call these friendly lawsuits. I'm suing you to get to a court of competent jurisdiction in which I can move forward with my case. And that's the case on both sides of this equation, is they wanted to get 2018-042, they being anti-casino, they being pro-casino, different facets within those, wanting to get that to a court of competent jurisdiction, which the first course would be circuit court in Polk County. And so you had an illegal exaction case based on the quorum court calling for that election. What you also had during that time frame is you had a group of pro-casino people who were going to sue the county for nonfeasance of office, which you have malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance. The nonfeasance equation is we being a pro-casino lobby, say that you being county government, should be acting accordingly, according to the Constitution, and your failure to do so will elicit, a nonfeasance claim. Would it have validity? Probably not. Would it have gone to a circuit court? Yes. Would it have resulted in another circuit court ruling of 2018-042 being constitutional? That was the point of it. The point wasn't to prove nonfeasance among county government. The proof was to get it to circuit court. And then you had Gulfside. Representatives of Gulfside came in and they just openly stated, if you don't write us a letter of support and take our conditions and terms, I'm going to sue you. That was verbatim. So we had that case. And then, of course, we have the ultimate case that we did enter into where the quorum court did act and they did do a resolution of support and the county was sued. So all four of those equations was going to land you in circuit court, and it was going to land you with a circuit court ruling. So all that took place between that June time frame and the August quorum court meeting where a resolution was ultimately approved. So that's what happened in the middle time frame of the summer of 2019. It was 4 people came forward, 4 entities came forward and said, we're going to sue you. And pro side, anti side, and in between side, they all said, we're going to sue you. Not for the purposes of suing Polk County, it was for the purposes of getting this before a circuit court judge for a ruling on constitutionality. So we all know as well that the circuit judge did rule on that case in October of 2019, and he did rule it unconstitutional. And so he did uphold the validity of Amendment 100 in his mind. And that case is under current appeal, and we don't know where that will take us. But the issue of the local option having validity, the choice of those 4 lawsuits was going to come to the same outcome, is what I'm trying to state. So that gives you a timeline of what led us and what moved the court, in my opinion, towards the August 12th, I think it was August 12th, through the August resolution, and why it was expedited in that June, July, August time frame is because ultimately, and I'm speaking from my opinion, we did not want to see the state of Arkansas decide this by default. I did not want to end up with one particular casino vendor by default. I did not want to see us submit a whole list of casino vendors to the Racing Commission for them to pick and decide for Polk County. So that involved an extensive vetting process. I've been vetting these people since April of 2018. April of 2018. So fast forward to the summer of 2019, that's how long I've personally been dealing with this. So I've got to know these people very well, first name basis, all the way up to the Keel family that came in at the last minute in May and made their pitch to Polk County. So I had a good base layer of all what they had to propose, of all what could be brought to the table, and after viewing the business model presented by the vendor of our choice, that was an easy choice. When you look at the 5 vendors, the actual choice of who we chose was Cherokee Nation Business. That was the easiest part of this whole equation. Their business model superseded everybody else by leaps and bounds. So that hopefully gives you the time frame and the selection process and what where we ended up with is from August, and then ultimately the circuit court ruling in October.
As for the JPs,
well, I want to second that the point that the judge just made about certainly having some control and say in this rather than it just being foisted upon us as a county. And us taking control of this process and being able to say, well, we're going to look at this and make a decision rather than having one made for us.
Yeah, and the June 11th meeting was particularly a big meeting for me. I felt like we had found maybe a mechanism to put this back out to a vote with the local ordinance, just putting it back out there. And that was my goal all along, was to get it back out there to to see what the people wanted. But there's two things that came out, and Judge hit on one of them. One that Mr. Story got up and told us an explanation of that ordinance that I had never heard before since the beginning of it. And it caught us all off guard. I even talked to him afterwards, and I mentioned to him what the judge had just said about, hey, we pick one, we put one out there for a fight. It's a war in Polk County to try to beat the vote. It's not a pure vote at that point. And he agreed that, yeah, that might happen, but that's what his interpretation of the ordinance was. The other thing, too, that came out for me was I was, on the back of our agenda, I was keeping a tally of who wanted the vote and how many people wanted the vote and how many people did not want the vote. Out of all the people that came and talked to the podium that night, only two people came up and said, we want the vote. We think that's the right action to have. Both sides of the issue, either for or against, did not want the vote. And that was shocking to me, to be honest. I thought we were doing what people wanted us to do and trying to find a mechanism to put this thing back out. But the reality was both sides did not see a point to have another vote. Some people said it's in the Constitution, just do your job. And the other said, no, we voted to have a local option, but we don't think that the people had already voted on it, so there's no reason to have another vote. So there was this back and forth, and it was unclear. And when Mr. Story got up and said that to me, it was like, okay, well, we can't do that. We can't use this local ordinance anymore after that. So it was a quandary for sure after the June 11th meeting.
And I think something that obviously bears restating is going back to having some kind of local control over this whole issue that was forced upon us. You got to remember, the Attorney General rejected this multiple times. The state Supreme Court overruled her in a 6-1 ruling to put this on the ballot. Now, local option out of the equation, just take into the fact the poor wording of the amendment itself, the fact that it establishes a 17.5% tax rate for private entities in Arkansas, the fact that it was beyond our selection process to even being included in it. And so, taking the fact that a 6-1 ruling by our Supreme Court overruling our Attorney General to put this on the ballot, this will end up back before those same 7 justices. And I would rather it go back with a selection that we can live with than a selection we are given. And I think that bears restating.
Did polling or social media or any other external factors play a role in your decision to choose a casino vendor? And what did you all learn about Amendment 100 that helped shape your opinion?
Well, from my standpoint, Amendment 100, again, poorly written, it establishes no standard of vetting. It establishes no procedure of vetting. It establishes no parameter of which to operate. It didn't place into their rules in the rules-making process, which was conducted throughout March of 2019. Nowhere did the vetting process become a rule, regulation, or suggestion even. It's obviously not in the amendment. So the vetting became, each person brought their set of designs, their set of plans, their opportunities of offerings, their economic impact statements of what they said they do. Those were all available. I made those available to this entity, to the newspaper. I made them available to the public, and they were available all summer long for anybody who wanted to come into my office and take them in there and go through them. Some people spent hours going through those 5 application packets and giving me their input and their what they thought could be included, what should be included. So it was open to the public all summer to come view those application packets. Now, again, bearing that there is not a rule, regulation, nor nowhere in the amendment that says this is how you pick a casino, we went on best business practice models, which is what anybody would do. If you're going to select anybody to come in and build anything for you or participate in your community, you're going to who has the best business model. And it became very clear, in my opinion, that there was only one that stood light years above the rest, economically speaking. And what it came down to from a vetting process is yes, is it money? But yes, who can you trust that you're talking to on the end of the phone? And there's some of the 5 I didn't trust. There's some of those that provided a one-stop shop as far as their economic benefit, but that's all they would have ever been. And I have no qualms in saying that 4 of the 5, 10, 15 years from now, would have just been that, a casino resort. One of the 5 has a business model that was presented to me and to members of the court, to members of the public, is still being presented as a business model that is far-reaching above and beyond a casino. And that's what Legends brought to the table that nobody else did. And so if you're making an economic decision based on future growth and development, you're going to do it off of a best business practice. So that was the vetting process. And again, those applications were wide open to anybody, and hundreds of members of the public came by my office throughout the summer and gave me their input. So,
and I'd say that in learning what was an Amendment 100 was also learning what wasn't there. The judge touched upon it. There wasn't, here's how this process is going to play out. So if you remember, out of the 4 locations for casinos in Arkansas, 2 of them were grandfathered in, already taken care of, and then a third one had been in the works for years. So Pope County gets to this, and we're at ground zero. We're starting right from scratch, and no playbook. No, this is how you're going to do this, or this is how the process is going to work. So I think that's one of the things that we found out what wasn't there. We weren't given that direction by anybody.
And the judge hit on this a little bit. It is mind-blowing to me that you have 2 private companies that are in Amendment 100 that, and Judge, I may be wrong on the percentages, but I think it's 17.5% of whatever Pine Bluff, what's the group in
Saracen Casino.
Yeah, what they make, and then whatever we make, whatever the casino makes here, is split 60-40. 60% goes to Oaklawn and 40% goes to Southland. Now, I'm not making that stuff up. That's in Amendment 100. Now, it's just, so if you're talking about things that are just enlightening to you when you read Amendment 100 and you see 2 private companies that are in there, I mean, that is mind-blowing to me. If we were to say that 2 private companies were going to be in the federal Constitution, I mean, people would just have a fit. But we're talking about there's 2 private companies, and there's a payment plan in there that they'll get paid first of the month, every month, and I think it goes through the state. It goes through the state before it gets to them. But you have that, Judge?
I have it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Verbatim. It goes through spelling out how all the tax revenues are to be distributed. Interestingly to note that in the passage of Amendment 100, it also lowered the overall gaming tax rate for the state of Arkansas to 13%, becoming probably the lowest in the nation, if not one of the lowest.
What's the Iowa?
Well, the Keel family was paying 28% tax rate in Iowa, but 17.5% to the Arkansas Racing Commission for deposit into the Arkansas Racing Commission Purse and Awards Fund to be used for purses of live horse racing and greyhound racing by the franchise holders, as the case may be, and a portion as set forth. And so it goes through all the apportionments, and then it says, on the last day of each month, the treasurer, state of Arkansas, shall receive the 17.5% revenues derived from the taxes levied under this amendment, referenced in Section C2, to the Arkansas Racing Commission to be distributed to the franchise holders as follows. 60% to the franchise holder operating to conduct horse racing, 40% distributed to the franchise holder to conduct greyhound racing. So you have, in our Constitution now, 2 private businesses profiting off 2 other private businesses at a 60-40% cut of a 17.5% ratio. So when you're talking about tax rates, when you look at this equation, so 17.5% of the 13% tax rate is going to 2 private businesses. And if there was a legal challenge to this whole deal, that's what I always bring up, here is an illegal exaction if there ever was one. If you're looking at an illegal exaction of taxes, you can hypothetically believe that the moment the Pine Bluff and or the Russell Casino have to send that first check in to the state on behalf of Oaklawn and the Greyhound Park, when that check gets cashed, that becomes an illegal exaction because you're causing this private business to pay this private business, and it's in our Constitution. So if there was ever, I guess, a legal analysis to be challenged, I think that would have been it.
And that should have occurred before it was voted on by the public. So once it was voted on by the public, it became the law of the land, the supreme law of the land of Arkansas, which everyone here has taken an oath to uphold.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to add about polling, about social media, anything else that might have shaped your opinion?
I know from my standpoint, polling is what you get out of it. I mean, there's Facebook polls, there's Twitter polls, there was the polls commissioned by the casinos. That did not weigh into my opinion of this at all. My opinion weighed into, we're fixing to get sued one of four ways. Let's make the best decision we can with the best vendor possible to keep us out of litigation to the extent necessary to get to a resolution. Because, again, I don't want the state of Arkansas making this final decision for Pope County with us not having input. So our input was to select a vendor and move forward with it as the case may be.
I would say I saw it as interesting. I mean, it didn't impact me personally in terms of making a decision one way or the other, but it sure was interesting to see who conducted the polls and the manner in which they conducted them.
I think there was I felt a shift in the public in that early summer area, and I think the polling just reflected that shift was occurring. Other than that, I don't think it weighed on my decision.
So you choose Legends on August 13th, this is the date that I've got here, and endorse their plan, which includes almost $40 million up front. Was it then that you were hit with the ethics complaints, or was it even before then? I'm trying to walk through the exact timeline. And I wanted to know whatever came of those, because, at some point there was alleged probable cause to investigate these things.
The ethics complaints wasn't about a week after?
Yeah.
I think it was about 1 week after that August 13th meeting. And there was an allegation made in our open quorum court meeting that there was probable cause, but that was incorrect information. The Ethics Commission went through and did an investigation. I believe J.P. Skelton's was just tossed out, I think, or maybe the person who made the complaint withdrew it. Yeah, withdrew the complaint. My complaint went through an investigation, and I'll let Caleb talk about his, but mine went through an investigation and a unanimous decision from the Ethics Commission to dismiss it. Nothing there.
Yeah, I know. So I think William Ogles had sent an email or something like that. It was the night before. It was a day of, I guess, that we had a meeting to talk about withdrawing the local ordinance, and so I get an email from William Ogles that says basically there's probable cause that has been found, and basically telling me to stop. And then Max Brantley is read aloud, saying that there had been probable cause. A citizen read that verbatim that night. And the funny thing is that we hadn't even been interviewed yet by the Ethics Commission. So there could have never been probable cause without first being interviewed, even to see if there was anything there. And so that was nothing but intimidation, trying to get at us. And the Ethics Commission, when the commissioner, not commissioner, but the investigator said, when I actually did go in to be interviewed, said, "Hey, there is no probable cause yet. I mean, we're doing the interview now. That didn't come from us, didn't come from the Ethics Commission." So, and then of course,
that attorney got the steps out of order.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we just we cooperated with them fully, and they ruled in mine for nothing, that there was nothing there.
Now, all sides point to CNB, Cherokee Nation Businesses and Legends, as the casino partner pending active litigation. It appears that you're happy with that decision, but how do you feel about your decision with the benefit of hindsight?
Oh, the choice would not change.
Zero doubt.
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt. The business model they have provided is hands down just it blows the competition out of the water.
Absolutely. They did a study. They had a study that came out in Oklahoma about Cherokee Nation business, and I think it was a $2.2 billion economic impact that they had in Oklahoma, and they affected over 19,000 jobs. And the neat thing about them, and the judge hit on this a little bit, is that they're not just a casino. Their portfolio consists of about 45% gaming, and then the rest of it is distributed to manufacturing. They have contracts with NASA, Department of Defense, other areas that are great jobs. So I mean, if you're talking about not it being just a casino resort, this was the only one out of the 5 that would have provided something greater to this area than just a casino. And so, yeah, it was a no-brainer for me. I have no regrets at all for CMB.
Right.
Will you please help explain to us in plain English the bond initiative, the bond issue? Because I know people like me, we don't understand the legalese and all the stuff that's around that. I know that Judge Cross and Sheriff Jones have filmed another piece that will go into great detail about that. But will you explain what this is all about?
You know, in simplistic terms, the legislature passed Act 703 in the summer of 2019. I'd followed that legislation ever since it was introduced in the spring by Senator Keith Ingram, and Representative Sample co-sponsored it. So it was a bipartisan, bicameral, both House and Senate bill, passed overwhelmingly. But what Act 703 does, it's only applicable to the 4 counties slated to get a casino, and it allows those counties to build infrastructure by issuing bonds that the casino tax revenues must pay for. And so that bond initiative that we're advocating for March 3rd coming up is addressing some very strategic needs that were needs long before the casino came to town. I tell everybody there's needs and there's wants. This list started with about 15 to 20 different projects. We held open meetings in November. We had a 3-hour meeting November 5th, open to the public to take and solicit input. People came in, and so that 15 projects got narrowed down to 5 that the quorum court chose to present to the voters on March 3rd. Now, the key thing to remember is the March 3rd vote is simply is the authorization. It does not mean that Polk County is going out and bonding up any debt. And in fact, what we have is the authorization, taking a proactive approach, because again, the needs and the wants are out there. The only thing I and the court, I assume, are advocating for is a new jail. We have to have this justice complex, whether a casino comes to town or not. That we've been under jail standards, what I call harsh review, since 2009. And so nothing has changed in the last now 11 years to change the situation. We've not suddenly emptied out the jail. So that's a can that's been kicked down the road, and this bond initiative simply applies a mechanism by which the casino revenues have to pay for it at no expense to the local taxpayer. That being said, if all the litigation was out of the way and the casino is digging dirt, you're looking at a 2-year construction phase, and then they have to be open for a year of operation to establish a tax base by which to know how much bonding ability you have as a governmental entity, and then that bonding comes. So logistically speaking, if all the legal hurdles were out of the way, it would be a minimum of 3 years down the road before the first dollar is bonded up in this bonding initiative. Then you're looking, assuming the jail bond passed, you're looking at a 2-year construction on that facility. So if all the litigation and legal hurdles were met, we're still looking at 5 to 6 years down the road before we open a new jail. And so I think that's imperative to know that the vote is just the authorization, and it's taking advantage of a situation that was forced upon us. So if you're for a casino, you should be glad that they're helping pay for your local infrastructure. If you're against a casino, you should make them want to pay. If you're indifferent to the whole situation, then you don't want your taxes going up locally when there's a mechanism that the legislature put in place for only 4 counties that allows this to happen. And I think that's where the simplicity of the bond is Polk County's not going into debt, and these will be by the project. So there's the total value of the whole bond initiative is some $80 million, but that's not what bonding will work. Bonding works by the project. And so the projects will be prioritized. Obviously, a library is a want. A jail is a need. An expo center is a want. A fire station for the Russell Fire Department is a need. So when you look at it in that equation, well, I'm just concentrating on the needs. I told the library director, you need to go concentrate on your initiative. The folks in supporting the expo center, you need to go advocate for that. I, as the county judge, I'm just advocating for a justice center because that's a need. It's a public safety issue that has been kicked down the road for 11 years now, and we have to build for growth. Pope County has experienced 40% growth in the last 25 years. If we keep on that same trend, in the year 2045, some 25 years from now, we'll be at 100,000 people in this county. We're at a jail right now that's busting at the seams. It's mechanically deficient. So that's what the bond initiative is about. And from my perspective and county government's perspective, we're focused on the needs. And I'll let those issues that are wants on the ballot speak for themselves.
Well, and I'm also on the jail committee as well. And one of the things that came out of the recent jail review from the director of jail standards is that by December of this year, we have to have a plan in place a written plan for how we're going to address the things that are necessary with our county detention center. And that's one of the reasons we need to know, does the public want the casino proceeds, the tax proceeds to pay for this all? If they say no, then we have to come up with another mechanism, and we've got to have some way to gauge what's going on and be able to get this paid for.
So what is the alternative if you don't bond the money? What is the alternative to do these types of things that you're saying need to be done?
Well, the only alternative is taxes. I mean, you have millage and sales tax that funds government in a county-wide setting. Those are your two mechanisms. So why would we want to raise a local sales tax or increase people's property taxes for something that Act 703 covers at no cost to the local taxpayer and spreads it out on the people that will be attending the casino's events and distribute that money back to our county at no cost? The equation I use is if you take our jail alone, over half the people taken into our jail originate from the city of Russellville. So if the solution is raise millage, and you're a gentleman at Hector that has a 500-acre cattle farm, why should I have, if I'm the 500-acre cattle farm owner in Hector, why should I have to pay higher property tax rates for Russellville's intake of inmates at a county jail? Well, the answer is he shouldn't. There should be nobody have to pay their personal property taxes going higher to solve a jail overcrowding issue that doesn't really affect me as a cattle farmer in the northern part of the county. So to me, that's not a solution. And getting people to vote for taxes upon themselves is a huge enough issue as itself. And you have to realize currently about 89 cents on the dollar in Pope County, that millage goes to schools. Pope County General Fund operates at 1 mill. That's the lowest in the Northwest Arkansas region. All of our surrounding counties are at 5 mills, so they're at 5 times the property tax rate that we are. So I think it's a problem that has a solution in Act 703 that no other county has, and that's why I advocate for it.
And I think I've heard this too. So, well, if it's what's so urgent about it right now? I mean, if this has been a problem, it's been a problem years ago. Why are you just now saying something about it? Well, the answer is we have been saying something about it. Sheriff Jones came to the courthouse and talked to us at a meeting, and this was before Judge Cross was there. It was Judge Gibson, and asked for a committee to be started, and that was, I think, 2 years ago that he asked for the committee to be started to at least start to come up with a plan for the problems that the jail was having. When Sheriff Jones and I were elected at the same time, and he was taking tours, wanted us to come in one at a time and take a tour of the jail. And I had been with the Gideons, and I'd been in there a couple times, but I had been into some of the other parts of this jail. And I'm telling you, Mark, it was rough seeing there was standing water in some of the places in the back. He'd open up a closet and there was mold in there. It was not just a little bit, a lot. And there's just roof leaks everywhere. And Blake Wilson's office. Every time it rains, his carpet was wet. I mean, we had a water bust.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, Christmas Eve. We had a water line that busted. So we spent about $250,000 to $300,000 on just maintenance for a new roof and other things to put a Band-Aid on it, more or less. But Judge Gibson did not get the committee together. We asked him to, but he did not. And so we knew that it was a problem. We've been trying to address the problems, but we didn't want to go up on the millage to address it. Now that we have this, we have a solution that is best for everybody. We don't have to go up on the taxes. We have a mechanism, a law in place that's completely legal for us to do this. And this isn't a want, this is a need, like the judge said. And these other things that are on the ballot, yes, they're things that we eventually want to get to, but we're only doing this one at a time. We're not bonding up $80 million right now. That is a misnomer. I've heard this max the credit card stuff out. That's bogus, fake news. We're going to do one project and one project only right now, and that's the Justice Complex, because that's the most important need that we have. And when that's paid off and that's done, then we'll go to the next one. Now, Judge just mentioned it. We only operate on one mill. One mill. And that's, do you know the library gets one mill? All right, so the library system gets one, and the county general gets one. And yet we operate, just in 2020, we operated 83% of our projected revenue. That's a record. We've never done that before in this county government. So that tells you that we take care of the purse strings. We take that is our job as justices. We don't handle these issues, these casino issues. That's not part of our job description, our day-to-day. But the purse strings are, and so we take really good care of it, diligent care of it. And so we're only going to do the one project now, and then we'll worry about the other stuff later when it comes down the road. But this is a need, guys. This isn't just a want.
Well, now to what I kind of feel like is the elephant in the room, and that's the contentiousness that's been between the city and the county. There's just what appears to be a lot of heat between the two. And I hope you'll forgive me in an election year for taking a moment to lay out the layers here. I wondered if it was just a matter of dollars and cents, if it was a matter of pride, if there were some things about the annexation, the bonds. What is it, if you guys can, from your perspective, and I'm going to have them do the same thing, lay out what's going on between the city and the county, and from your perspective, why?
I have no idea what's going on with the city. So, I mean,
I think I might can give some background on it. When again, going back to that summer of 2019 time frame, when it became apparent that the county was going to be in litigation from one side or the other, and it became apparent that we need to pick the best vendor for the choice, the vendor offered up an economic development agreement, i.e. cash. How much cash up front? And it wasn't how much cash up front do you want? Well, they came up, Cherokee Nation Business came up and say, we can offer economic incentives we think nobody else can. And this is how we can do it, and this is what we can do it. Now, they came to me with that. And I could have been selfish and say, I'm just looking out for Polk County, but Polk County is 6 cities. Polk County is unincorporated lands. Polk County is 65,000 people. And so 6 cities have 6 mayors. So when I was approached by the vendors with this, I said, it would be highly selfish to just say, cut Polk County government a $40 million check, we'll call it good, and move on. So I reached out to the mayors of all 6 cities. I reached out to the heads of the Chambers of Commerce. I reached out to the school superintendents. I reached out to the heads of nonprofits. Obviously, I reached out to members of the court. And we all were involved in this process. And throughout the process, 5 mayors, with the exception of the Russellville mayor, came in and gave me their opinion and what they'd like to see out of this. And so the economic development agreement that was ultimately signed off on at that same August meeting is the compiling of everybody's input: superintendent's input, chamber's input, economic development input, nonprofit input, and those 6 mayors. So 5 of the mayors came in And at first, we looked at a distribution based on the way they get their sales tax remitted to them. But that was, I guess, highly unfair for your very small communities like Hector and London. And so what we agreed upon was a good plausible idea was, let's take a proven fact that we know, and that is your 2019 appropriated budget. So every city in Polk County passed a budget in 2018 for what 2019 would be. So you couldn't alter those numbers, you couldn't fluff them up, they are what they are. And so what you see in that economic development agreement is the entire appropriated budget for those 5 cities that their mayors requested. So when you see those numbers and why they are to the dollar amount and why they're peculiar, that is it. That is the entire operating budget of Hector, Dover, London, Atkins, Pottsville, who all participate in this agreement. The mayor chose not to, and I respect that. But had the mayor come in and said, I want the city of Russellville to have our entire budget, he would have got it. That's just the simple facts. So what I did advocate on behalf of the city is I had hundreds of people come through my office all summer looking at these packages, giving input. And the 3 main things that kept reoccurring were, we want our convention center, we want a water park, and we want some kind of music venue. So incorporated into those packages are a convention center for the city of Russellville, bought and paid for, no taxpayer expense, operated by the vendor and not the city. A water park that is I've seen all the diagrams, it's twice as big and twice as nice as Clarksville's. And a music center, everybody talks about the Walmart amp in Bentonville. So something along that equation. So those were put in there. Those are all generating revenue for, obviously, Russellville, Polk County. Everybody benefits from that as a tax base. So those things were negotiated specifically for the city of Russellville. So that's kind of the background of the economic development agreement. And like I said, I had 5 out of 6 mayors actively participate in that and give me their opinions. And that was all written in there because, again, from a county standpoint, I'm representing everybody. The people of Russellville, the people of Pottsville, the people of Hector, the people at Tilley. I represent all, so I looked out for a financial equation that benefited all. And that was the involvement that led to that economic development agreement. And we may touch on it later of what the county intends to do with their portion of that. But that's kind of the, I think if it was to say what began some animosity county city-wise, it was for their lack of participation in the economic development agreement up front. And in doing so, I think they felt they have been left out ever since. But that was the choice of chief executives and not my choice. The offer was extended, and so again, you'll have the tax base and all that grows around all this to support everyone. But I think that was the beginning of what I call an adversarial contention between that. Now, since that time, the mayor and I reach out on a multitude of other events, from recycling to multiple issues across that intertwine between county and city government. There's no doubt that the city of Russellville is the single biggest consumer of Polk County goods and services by about a 2/3 margin. So we have to work together. They're our biggest customer. The county government's biggest customer is the city of Russellville. So when we talk about this bond initiative, we're trying to build a facility that serves the biggest customer, Russellville. We talk about a library. The biggest number of library attendees are Russellville residents. So it's intertwined, whether we like it or not, and I don't have opposition to it because all 5 of these equations on the bond initiative benefit and are in the city of Russellville. So I try and downplay because I don't have any animosity because Russellville is I was born here. I was raised here. And so I've been here for 51 years now and born on St. Mary's on West Main. So Russellville is deep in my heart. The I Love Russellville campaign is deep in my heart. So I don't have that animosity. I've reached out. I've sought input since that economic development agreement and trying to work out what will happen with the casino. And we're still in that dialogue to this day. So I think a lot of the hype is in social media, not so much in the actual people, the CEOs of the 6 cities and the county judge working together. So
well,
I don't hear any animosity.
I don't. The only thing we thought we had an agreement with them back on December 14th, I think it was, when we had the meeting over at Tech. I mean, it was our understanding that we were only going to bond up 80%. That was an agreed to, correct me if I'm wrong, that came from the mayor. And so we thought we were only going to bond it up, 80% of it, and we would give them voluntary annexation after the license had been granted, and this was all, mentioned in that public meeting. And so in order to do what they asked us to do, one of the things they wanted was for us to put on the bonding a fire station, and 5 police cars would be part of that bonding. So we did. The Tuesday before we had that meeting, we put our money where our mouth was, and we voted to put their bonding initiative, which was the fire station, on to be voted on. We said, all right, guys, we'll show you that we mean what we say. We want this agreement. We have no animosity towards you. And so then we got there on Thursday, and we thought it was just kind of be, hey, let's sign this thing, let's shake hands, let's have a good moment and move on. And it never happened. The city council, I guess, wasn't happy with it. Then they walked away from that agreement, and the mayor didn't sign it. And so the conversation kept going with the judge and the mayor. Am I saying anything wrong? Like, no. Y'all continue dialogue. And I think even Justice Skelton, who's president of the alliance, was advocating to try to work something out as well with them. And Judge, did we come off that 80% number even more?
The 75.
The 75. So we even came
75-25.
75-25. We're only going to bond up 75, which would leave them over $1 million annually. We were going to give them voluntary annexation, and we were going to bond up the fire station and 5 vehicles. And we thought that was agreed to, but that they walked away from that 48 hours later, and that's just where it is today. So, I mean, we've been trying to work with them. We don't hold any animosity, but at the same time, I don't know what they want, and we've been trying to work hard to figure that out. But so I don't know, to be honest.
And under the law, once that bond terminated, then the revenue shifts back to the city in its entirety. So it goes back to that split where the city gets the larger portion. So in the long run, the city was going to get a lot more money.
The mayor has told me and told public groups as well that the city of Russellville is seeking direct financial impact from the beginning, and that they need the operating expenses up front. Now, from a county standpoint, my outlook is for all 6 cities and all of Pope County is, I do not want Pope County, and Dr. Enchelmeyer is our budget chair, he does not want Pope County dependent upon casino revenue. We are operating at 83 cents on the dollar. That's phenomenal.
Yep.
And so by doing that, I don't want us to become dependent on something that is that I guess is the new shiny thing in town. And I would rather us take advantage of the bonding initiative and the Act 703 procedure to go forward, build what we need to last for the next 50 years, let the casino pay for it, and when those bonds are retired, then the back end of that will be the equation of the Amendment 100 standard, which starts in with new revenue. And then the future judge at that time, the future court at that time, will have a new revenue source that was not dependent from day one on casino revenue. So that's just the county's perspective on it, is the reason we are willing to bond up that money is we don't want to be dependent upon casino revenue. We want the casino revenue to go build the infrastructure that Pope County needs to deal with the casino, and do it up front at no cost to the taxpayers. So that's the mechanism. But I think the main thing is like I said, we're sitting at for the equation to make sense is for every dollar we anticipate to come in 2020, we've only allocated 83 cents of it back out is county government operations.
And how big is our budget? How big is our budget?
$27.7 million.
Okay, so that's off of $1 million, and how much is sales?
Right.
The sales tax.
And that 83% would be even less if you took out the grants that were required to pay.
And I think the opposite end of that spectrum, which I think the mayor brought this up at our joint meeting at Arkansas Tech, was that the city is operating at 98 cents on the dollar. And so that's I think they stated that in their meeting out there. And so I thought that was interesting, that for every dollar anticipated to come into the city coffers during the year 2020, 98 cents of it is already allocated. So I think that's the difference. I think that's why they perceive the need for direct revenue and we do not. But I go back to the fact that we're providing 2/3 of the services that, especially in emergency services, ambulance service, 911, jail. We provide 100% of many services like tax assessments, tax collections, tax remittance, coroner's office. Those are all 100%. Veteran services, senior adult center, library services, the court system, the juvenile system. So you go on down the road, we're providing 100% of those services. And so we're just trying to do something that provides our biggest customer the best services.
And they pay for a certain portion on like for an inmate. They pay for a certain portion of on a daily basis, right?
That's correct.
To a certain time, too.
Yeah, 911, they pay their fair share. Mm-hmm. That's no qualms there. They pay their fair share of 911 services. When you're looking at the ambulance service, that is not funded at any taxpayer expense. Mm-hmm. Since 2007, the Polk County Ambulance Service, which services the entire county, has been a self-funded mechanism taking no tax dollars. So, but 2/3 of the people that ride in those ambulances originate from calls in the city of Russellville. Now, when we get to the jail, it's kind of interesting because the city pays $42 per day per inmate that they put in there. But what is kind of a misnomer is the fact that when they put an inmate in our jail that gets charged with a felony, once that felony charge is filed, that becomes a county expense from that point on to adjudication until they go to prison or whatever. So if you take an individual that is arrested for burglary in the city of Russellville, that person gets booked into the jail, they get a bond hearing, and then that charge gets filed in the first, here's the prosecutor, week.
Pretty quick.
So once that charge gets filed in circuit court, then the county assumes all the cost of feeding, housing, clothing, medical of that inmate from that point to adjudication. Likewise, if let's hypothetically say a Russellville police officer arrested an individual for DWI third offense, that goes through the district court system, and the judge at district court sentences that person to 90 days in jail. That was a Russellville arrest that went through the Russellville side of the court system. The moment he gets that 90-day sentence, it becomes a county expense. The city doesn't pay $42 a day for those 90 days. That's a county expense. So they pay for the initial intake of inmates, but the actual cost of the inmate is passed on to the county.
So we have all the overhead. We have all the maintenance that I've already mentioned. Any leaks, that's on us. Any hiring, that's on us. So we take on the responsibility because it's a county complex, and they pay $42 a day, some, and that just breaks even for the food and the clothes and stuff like that, basically.
The way I like to say it is that provides 3 hots and a cot.
Yeah.
Because we are mandated by state law to provide inmates a 2,200 calorie a day diet, and obviously medical and expenses like that. So you take 200 inmates out there in a 172-bed jail right now. We're having to provide 600 meals a day because we're providing them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So that expense is borne by the county. Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys wanted to hit?
In the economic development agreement that was achieved with Cherokee Nation, the county received about $27 million. And that, incidentally enough, is our 1-year annual operating budget for the whole county. So that is money that will come in within 30 days of licensure and all appeals being adjudicated. And so that will not build this justice complex. But Polk County obviously has a bunch of other issues besides just the jail, where we have an ambulance service that is 40 years old. So that money is going to jumpstart all the other infrastructure projects that we can't do in the bond initiative. So we have to have a new ambulance service. Our ambulance service is over 40 years old. It was designed to hold 19 employees when it was built, and now we have 43 employees still trying to operate out of the same facility. In 1981, when they opened their doors, you had 1, maybe 2 female employees. Now over a third of our workforce are female, and we have no proper accommodations for that workforce. And uniquely enough, I talked about our strategic growth initiative. 25 years ago, 1995, the ambulance service was operating at about 3,500 runs a year. last year, 2019, we had over 8,500 ambulance runs in Pope County. And so when you talk about this lump sum of money the county's getting, we're going to build a new ambulance service. We're going to build substations. We've got to build a new road department. We have to get off that 14-acre imprint we have on Weir Road and move those facilities out to proper locations and vacate that. A health department. Our health department was built along the same time, and they're servicing 10 times the population they did when they started. And so when you think about what are you going to do with that cash in the bank, we're going to jumpstart all these other infrastructure improvement projects that are out there that are not being addressed by the bond initiative.
And I think roads too. I mean, you mentioned before, hey, there's some bridges out here that are used heavily every day.
Well, you think, for example, Center Valley Road, going to Center Valley School. When you come off Highway 7 and you get about a tenth of a mile outside the city limits on Center Valley Road, there's a double 90-degree curve. There's been 17 wrecks in the last 10 years there, 1 fatality, and it's a dangerous situation that school buses are going up every day. To change out that one bridge and straighten the road is a $1.5 million project, that one location alone. And so, we have to address some dire circumstances, be them in the city or in the county or wherever, that have just been neglected for so long. So that's what that economic development money will go to.
Mill Creek Road's another one of those examples that we could use. I mean, how many times have we been over there and there's been somebody that just goes right out into the lake? I mean, because it's icy situations, you're coming off that hill. Let's fix it. I mean, we got the money, let's fix it. And then what we don't spend, let's put it back into the bank accounts and let it generate interest, and that's new revenue that we have coming in every year off of the interest that we're making off of that.
Yeah, your budget chair's for saving some too.
So it's just smart way to do that. I mean, that's what I appreciate about the judge and the members of the court, is that we really take those taxpayer dollars and we stretch them as much as possible to get these projects done that we need to get done, but we also save so well. 83% is incredible. And then we put money back every year. We put about $400,000 back in a surplus investment account. And so we just put it there for a rainy day fund in case something comes up at the mostly Sheriff Jones comes and asks us that he needs something. But he comes. We've got $2 million roughly in that account, and we just took money from that account to pay for how many radios? 40?
40 mobiles, 40 handhelds.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we took, if we didn't do what we did every year, we wouldn't be able to pay for those radios. We wouldn't be able to pay for the new polling equipment that we have. We wouldn't be able to pay for some of the work that we've done at the courthouse, like buying the building next door that we've done and moving some people over there. We wouldn't be able to do the renovations that we've done at the sheriff's departments. If we weren't smart with the money and putting the $400,000 and building our surplus investment up, these wouldn't be possible, and that is a credit to the court and to the county judge for doing that.
Well, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention our treasurer. But you brought up a good point there, working with the city. Downtown parking, a huge issue. Creating a justice complex off the site will eliminate a bunch of courthouse traffic, open up more parking. By this economic development agreement, we'll be able to take that money and provide more downtown parking with the demolition of structures and redoing of parking lots. So a lot of that economic development money can go towards that. So, and that's all working with the city. The city planner, Miss Sarah John she's brought me over all kinds of studies and stuff. So we're integrated and working on that project as we speak. But again, back to your treasurer. Pope County got a gem when they elected Larry Holman treasurer. Mm-hmm. And just for instance, in the last calendar year alone, he has created probably 1.2 million in added revenue, but he alone came up with $600,000 in new revenue by 2 simple equations. He merged all of our checking and bid it out for interest-bearing accounts. We're achieving 2.75% interest, and that had never been done before. That single act alone created $434,000 in new revenue in the year 2019. Additionally, he found where we were not doing our proper state, we were doing it properly, but we were not charging enough back to the state to get turnback funds. That's going to create another $160,000 in new revenue this year. So in one calendar year, this gentleman has created nearly $600,000 in previously unrecouped revenue that was just sitting there, but because of his knowledge and take on that, everybody, the entire citizenry of Polk County has benefited. So,
Yeah, the last thing I would want to just emphasize is that myself, and I'm sure these guys too, wanted nothing more than to have a vote. It was impossible to do, and that was the hardest thing. Is because I think when you put as many hours into trying to do something, to trying to figure out a way to have a vote, and then the answer is no every time, that's difficult. And we were faced with a decision that was extremely important, and I think the judge did a great job with everything, and just trying to find the best solution to all this. But I would hope at this point, Mark, that the hate and the bitterness and stuff can start to subside, and that we can go on to just back to where Russellville used to be, where Polk County used to be. And there's a lot of people that said a lot of hateful things to all of us. We got all kinds of emails. And, hey, emotions run high. This was an important decision. I understand all that. So I don't hold any bitterness or animosity toward anybody. But I do want to point out that there was one person that got it right. And I hope he doesn't mind me calling him out. But Brother Ronnie Morris, as most people in this community know him. And we talked on the phone, and I went to his office, and I talked to him many times. And, of course, he didn't want the casino, and I respected his opinion, and I kept him informed all along the way. And I remember I updated him the last time before the meeting, and he didn't obviously want me to do didn't want us to do anything, but he didn't hate me for it either. And after the vote we had that night, it was a terrible day. It was a terrible day. And I'm walking out of the courtroom, and I see Ronnie Morris standing there, and he said, "Hey, I still love you." And he gave me the biggest hug, and he just wrapped his arms around me, and he said, "Hey, man, it's okay. I still love you." Now that's what this needs to be about. It needs to be more about the person instead of the politics. And I think we've lost focus on that in this community for a long time now. This thing's going to happen, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I think we need to talk more about helping our neighbors, not trying to beat them up, no matter what side of this issue you're on. So I hope that at this point we can just put our arms down, reach out, shake a hand, and just agree to disagree if we have to. But I hope we're past some of the hatefulness.